Gentlemen, what would you do if the woman you trusted most slowly turned into a stranger right before your eyes? This is the story of Ethan Turner. At 48 years old, he was the kind of man people quietly admired, even if they never said it aloud. An accountant by trade, Ethan lived his life like he balanced his books steady, disciplined, with every line accounted for. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't reckless. He believed that love, like numbers, could be protected by structure, by rhythm, by routine. For 22 years, his wife Laura had been his partner in that routine, once warm, reliable, the kind of woman who could turn even the dullest family dinner into a memory worth keeping. Together, they had raised 2 teenagers, built a home, and shaped a life that on the outside looked balanced, maybe even enviably. Dinner was on the table almost every night at 6. Jokes were told, often repeated, but always laughed at. Vacations were modest, but planned with care. Ethan thought he'd cracked the code of contentment. Not too much, not too little, just enough. There were no storms on the horizon, no battles left unspoken, no signs of a fracture, at least, not yet. For Ethan, the world seemed calm, his life intact, his family close. But sometimes, the most dangerous threats to a man's peace don't come like thunder or lightning. They creep in quietly, disguised as harmless change, as harmless growth. And before you even realize it, the woman sitting across from you at dinner, the same woman you once knew better than anyone else, begins to feel like a stranger in your own home. And that, gentlemen, is where Ethan's story truly begins. It began innocently enough. Laura, after years of quietly managing the household and living within the comfort of familiar routines, announced she wanted to work on herself. At first, Ethan welcomed it. After all, hadn't he always said that health was a gift? That self-discipline was the key to a long life. When Laura signed up for a fitness program that promised transformation, Ethan was proud. He even joked that maybe she'd get him to join one day. In those early weeks, he supported her in every way he knew how. He covered mornings with the kids, handled breakfast, encouraged her when she returned from long workouts, drenched in sweat. He admired her determination. It gave him a quiet pride to think his wife was rediscovering herself. To him, it was just another chapter in their shared story, another season they would go through together. But seasons are supposed to change slowly. This one did not. The program consumed her. New workout gear arrived at the house almost every week. Bright-colored leggings and tops Ethan had never seen her wear before. The kitchen counter filled with protein powders, supplements, and meal prep containers labeled with calories and macros. And then came the social media account. What started as a small page to track her fitness journey turned into a full-blown project. Laura posted daily before and after photos, workout clips, motivational captions. Ethan watched, confused but supportive. He thought it was harmless, but soon, he noticed how every ping of a notification lit up her face more than his smile did. Every compliment online seemed to carry more weight than his encouragement at home. Family dinners began to disappear. At first, it was just once or twice a week. Laura was too tired, or she had to log a food diary, or she had a live workout session to post. Then entire weekends were rearranged around content creation. Ethan would sit at the table with their kids, plates cooling, while Laura filmed herself in the backyard, talking to her phone with the kind of enthusiasm she no longer showed at home. The vocabulary in their house shifted. Words like branding, followers, and engagement replaced conversations about school, family trips, or weekend plans. Ethan found himself nodding, pretending to understand, even when the world she spoke of made no sense to him. Their daughter, Emma, was the first to say out loud what everyone else felt. One evening, when Laura brushed past them to take another call, Emma muttered, "She talks more to her phone than to us." The words cut deep. Ethan looked at his daughter's tired eyes and realized she was right. He told himself it was temporary, just a phase. Maybe Laura needed this to feel alive again. Maybe. After 22 years of marriage, it was natural for someone to seek new energy, new confidence. He excused the skipped dinners, The late nights scrolling. The endless photos. He reminded the kids to be patient with their mom, even as they grew frustrated with her absence. But deep inside, unease began to settle. Ethan had always believed that routine protected love, that steady schedules and shared habits built a wall strong enough to withstand time. But now, that wall felt like it was crumbling brick by brick. He could still hear Laura's laughter in the next room. But it wasn't for him. He could still see her smile. But it wasn't aimed at their family. For the first time in decades, Ethan felt a faint chill in his chest. A whisper of doubt. The kind of doubt a man doesn't admit out loud not yet. Anyway. Because once you give it words, once you let it out, you can't take it back. And so, Ethan stayed silent, watching, waiting, hoping he was wrong. At first, Ethan convinced himself it was nothing. Every husband notices changes. He thought, maybe he was just tired. Maybe he was overanalyzing. But the little details stacked up. And soon, they were too heavy to ignore. Family plans were the first casualty. Saturday movie nights gone. Sunday dinners with his parents canceled. Laura always had a reason she was too tired. She had to finish editing a video. She had a networking call with someone in the fitness world. The excuses rolled off her tongue so smoothly that even Ethan almost believed them. But their children noticed. They sat at the dinner table, staring at the empty chair, their plates untouched. Late nights became routine. Laura claimed she was building her brand, chatting with other influencers, learning how to grow her following. Ethan would roll over in bed at midnight, only to see the glow of her phone lighting up the room. Her laughter soft, almost flirtatious, drifted through the silence. She'd turn her phone face down when he shifted, as if even the screen itself carried secrets he wasn't meant to see. And then came the perfume. It wasn't the familiar scent she'd worn for years, the one that reminded Ethan of vacations and anniversaries past. No. This was sharper, bolder. The kind of fragrance a woman wears when she wants to be noticed. When he asked about it, Laura brushed it off casually. Just something new I'm trying. But the words lingered in his head like smoke that wouldn't clear. Ethan told himself not to be paranoid. He worked numbers for a living. And numbers always added up. Feelings, however, were messier. He tried to push the thoughts away. To believe his wife's explanations. She was rediscovering herself. He repeated like a mantra, that's all. Nothing more. But his sons weren't fooled. Daniel, their oldest, grew quieter at the table, pushing food around without eating. One night, he asked bluntly, "Dad, are you and Mom fighting?" Ethan froze. He wanted to lie, to keep up the appearance of control. But the truth lodged in his throat. He simply said, "Your mom's busy right now. Give her time." Daniel's eyes told him he didn't believe it. Even their younger son, Caleb, noticed. He stopped telling his mom about school projects, stopped asking her to come to his games. When Ethan asked why, Caleb shrugged and muttered, "She's not here anyway." The dinners grew quieter. Jokes that once filled the room fell flat. The sound of forks scraping against plates replaced laughter. And in that silence, Ethan began to feel like a ghost in his own home present. But unseen, he still tried to reach for her. He offered to join her workouts, asked if she wanted to plan a trip just for the two of them. Each time, she brushed him off. "I'm too busy. I already have plans. You wouldn't understand." The words cut deeper than she realized. They weren't just rejections of his time. They were rejections of his place in her life. Nights stretched long. Ethan would sit alone in the living room, pretending to watch television. While Laura dressed for another event, he noticed the extra time she spent in front of the mirror. The new clothes that seemed less practical and more provocative. He noticed how she smiled at her phone. A smile he hadn't seen directed at him in months. The house, once alive with routine and warmth, felt hijacked by something he couldn't name. It wasn't just the absence of his wife. It was the presence of her new world. A world that had no room for him. Ethan still clung to hope. He told himself it was a phase. That every marriage had storms. That maybe she just needed space. But deep down, he knew the truth every betrayed man eventually feels when love starts to vanish. It doesn't go quietly. It leaves traces. And those traces were everywhere. staring him in the face. For the first time in his life, Ethan began to wonder if the woman he'd built a life with was no longer building it with him, and that thought, more than anything else, left him with a hollow ache that no routine could protect him from. There comes a point when silence becomes unbearable. For weeks, Ethan tried to reason with himself, tried to excuse the changes in Laura as nothing more than a passing phase. But the unease in his chest grew heavier by the day. Finally, one evening over coffee, he confided in the only person he trusted enough to hear the words aloud, his longtime friend, Mark. Mark listened carefully, never interrupting, his face tightening with each detail Ethan shared. The late nights, the perfume, the hidden phone, the canceled dinners. When Ethan finally stopped talking, Mark leaned back and said, "You need to know for sure. Guessing will eat you alive. There's someone who can help." He was talking about Sam Whitaker, a retired investigator who'd once worked private cases around town. Ethan recoiled at the suggestion. Hiring someone to watch his wife felt like betrayal in itself. But deep down, he knew that what he feared wasn't paranoia, it was reality knocking at his door. And so, with heavy hesitation, he agreed. Sam was calm, methodical, the kind of man who'd seen too much of human weakness to be surprised by it anymore. He laid out what needed to be done: check GPS logs, monitor social media, watch for inconsistencies. Ethan provided what access he had: synced phone data, a calendar full of supposed workout times. The first few days looked normal. The dots on the GPS map lined up with gyms and fitness studios. But then the gaps appeared. Laura would leave the house dressed for a training session downtown. Yet the logs showed her stopping in an entirely different neighborhood, over and over. Her locations repeated: an uptown apartment building, hotel parking lots, places that had nothing to do with fitness. Sam cross-checked the information with Laura's online life. On social media, she smiled brightly in workout videos, captioned with hashtags about health and perseverance. But the timestamps didn't always align. Posts marked as gym days coincided with GPS records, showing she'd barely gone near one, and then a name surfaced: Ryan Cole. He was young, maybe mid-30s? A personal trainer with an online following of his own. His profile was full of women praising his methods, thanking him for transformations that seemed to go beyond the physical. Mark, who had started helping Sam sift through the digital trail, noticed how often Ryan's name appeared in Laura's likes and comments. One archived livestream sealed the suspicion. Laura called him "my guide." Her laughter too personal, too familiar. Still, suspicion wasn't enough. Ethan needed proof. And proof came in the form of surveillance footage. Sam managed to obtain security camera clips from a hotel parking lot. There, clear as day, was Laura, entering with Ryan, dressed not for training, but for something else entirely. Hours later, the footage showed them leaving together, smiling, holding hands. Ethan stared at the screen, his stomach hollowing out with each passing frame. He wanted desperately for it to be a mistake, for the grainy image to belong to someone else. But there was no mistake. It was Laura, his wife. The evidence piled higher: location data, photos, messages hidden in drafts on her accounts. Each piece connected seamlessly, forming a truth that was no longer open to interpretation. Ethan's world cracked. The woman he had trusted for 22 years, the mother of his children, had carved out a secret life with another man. And in that moment, Ethan learned the kind of lesson every betrayed husband dreads sometimes. The truth doesn't just set you free. Sometimes, it breaks you first. And now, there was no turning back. The evening came quietly. Though Ethan knew it would be anything but ordinary, he sat alone at the kitchen table, a small flash drive in his hand, the weight of it heavier than any object he'd ever carried. On that drive was the truth, collected piece by piece, undeniable and merciless. The front door opened just after 9. Laura walked in with shopping bags slung over her arm, her face lit with the glow of triumph. She moved through the house as if she were floating, her voice bright as she talked into her phone about new partnerships, new followers, new opportunities. She looked like a woman who had everything she wanted, but Ethan knew better. When she finally hung up, she turned toward him, her smile wide. "You won't believe the day I had." she began, pulling items out of the bag as if showing off trophies. But Ethan didn't move. He didn't smile. He simply said, "Laura, sit down. I need to show you something." She paused, her eyes narrowing. But there was no warning in his voice. No anger. Just a steady calm that made her uneasy. Ethan opened his laptop, inserted the flash drive, and with one click, the truth lit up the screen. The footage played in silence. Laura's figure, walking hand in hand with Ryan Cole into a hotel. Hours later, the same two figures emerging, laughing, holding each other as if the world around them didn't exist. It took her only seconds to realize what she was looking at. Her face stiffened. She glanced at Ethan, then back at the screen. The silence between them was suffocating. When she finally spoke, her words came sharp and defensive. "So you've been spying on me, going through my life like some kind of detective." Ethan's voice remained calm. "What you call your life, I call our marriage. And what you call privacy, I call betrayal." Her face twisted, caught between anger and fear. She paced the room, tried to build walls with words. "You don't understand. With him, I felt alive again. For years I've been invisible, drowning in routine. Ryan made me feel like myself again." Ethan stood slowly, his eyes locked on hers. "Alive, Laura. What you call freedom, I call betrayal. And there's no other word for it." She tried to cry, but the tears seemed more like performance than remorse. She insisted he had been controlling, that she had needed something more, that none of this meant she didn't love her children. But Ethan had heard enough. The evidence spoke louder than her excuses. He let the silence hang, then finally gave her a choice. His words were measured, final. "If this is the life you want, go live it. But you're leaving tonight, and when you're ready, you will look our children in the eyes and tell them the truth yourself." Laura froze. For years, she had known Ethan as a man of patience, routine, and quiet tolerance. But the man standing in front of her now was different, resolute, unshakable. She searched for softness, for hesitation, but there was none. Her shoulders sagged as she realized the moment had come. There would be no negotiating, no pretending. Ethan wasn't asking for explanations anymore. He was announcing the end, and with that, the home they had built together shifted forever. The lies had been dragged into the light, and there was no way back into the shadows. Laura didn't fight the decision, at least, not with the kind of fire Ethan half expected. She moved to the closet, pulled down a suitcase, and began folding clothes with shaking hands. Her words were a mess of contradictions. "I still love you," followed by, "You never understood me. This isn't what it looks like," followed by, "He made me feel alive." Each excuse was weaker than the last, bouncing off Ethan's silence like stones against a wall. When the bag was zipped, she paused at the doorway, waiting for him to soften, to beg her to stay, to give her one more chance. But the man standing before her wasn't the husband she had grown accustomed to bending. Ethan was calm, firm, and unyielding. He simply told her to let him know if she ever intended to come back for the rest of her things, but to make sure the children wouldn't be home when she did. The door closed with a hollow thud. And just like that, 22 years of marriage broke into pieces. Upstairs, two pairs of footsteps shuffled nervously. They'd heard enough to know something was wrong, but not enough to understand. Ethan climbed the stairs slowly, feeling the weight of fatherhood pressing on him harder than ever before. He gathered his children in the living room, sat them down, and spoke words no parent wants to say. He didn't sugarcoat it. He didn't invent villains or soften the edges of reality. He simply told them the truth. Their mother had made choices. Choices that meant she wouldn't be living with them anymore. The reaction was instant and raw. His daughter broke into sobs, burying her face against his shoulder, while his son sat rigid, his silence louder than any outburst. Ethan held them both, steadying them with the only thing he could still offer: honesty. "Don't hate her," he told them softly. "Don't let bitterness take root. But don't believe that lies are something we have to live with, either. Being sad doesn't make us weak. It makes us human. And from today forward, we'll be a smaller family, but a more honest one." The days that followed were heavy. The absence was everywhere in the empty chair at the dinner table. in the quiet of the mornings, in the folded laundry that never came from Laura's hands. But slowly, a new rhythm began to take shape. Ethan reorganized the grocery lists, adjusted the schedules, and picked up the little things his wife used to do. His daughter began helping him in the kitchen, something she'd never shown much interest in before. Side by side, they discovered meals together, burning some, laughing at others, but always finishing what they started. His son, though quieter, began taking on small chores without being asked, mowing the lawn, fixing little things around the house, standing beside his father in a way that spoke louder than words. The home, though scarred, began to breathe again, without the weight of pretense. There was a strange kind of lightness. The laughter wasn't constant, but when it came, it was real. The silence wasn't filled with suspicion anymore, only space. Waiting to be rebuilt, Ethan felt the difference in his own chest. He still carried pain, but it no longer pressed down on him like before. It moved differently now, less like a wound and more like fuel. For the first time in a long time, the house belonged to truth, and though the absence still lingered, so did something else: hope. Life has a way of leveling its scales, though not always in the ways we expect. For Laura, the thrill of her new beginning with Ryan Cole burned fast and bright, and then fizzled into ashes. At first, she clung to the idea that she had traded up, that passion and excitement would erase the guilt of everything she had left behind. But reality came sooner than she imagined. Ryan was never the devoted partner she had painted him to be. His charm, once intoxicating, quickly soured into arrogance. Nights out without explanation, messages from other women on his phone, excuses that mirrored the very ones she used to give Ethan. Within months, Laura discovered what betrayal felt like from the other side, and it stung deeper than she could bear. Her social media, once a glowing display of her transformation, began to fade. Partnerships dissolved, collaborations dried up, and followers drifted away when the shine wore off. What had felt like freedom turned hollow. She was left in a small apartment, scrolling through old pictures of the family she had fractured, wondering how quickly admiration had slipped into irrelevance. While her world unraveled, Ethan's began to rebuild, not in dramatic fashion, but in steady, quiet steps. He reconnected with old friends he hadn't seen in years, accepting lunch invitations he used to decline. He returned to hobbies that once brought him peace: long walks in the park, the sound of running shoes on pavement, the satisfaction of building something with his hands. Most of all, he leaned into fatherhood with a strength he hadn't known he possessed, helping with homework, cooking side by side, listening more than speaking. Ethan became a man defined not by what had been taken from him, but by what he chose to give. And in that silence, justice was served, not in courtrooms or arguments, but in the quiet dignity of a man who refused to be broken. He was no longer just the betrayed husband. He was something stronger, a man forged by truth, carrying scars that no longer bled, but shined as proof that he had survived. Betrayal can break a man. It can strip away the life he thought was secure, leave him standing in the ruins of promises he believed would last forever. But betrayal can also do something else. It can rebuild him into someone stronger, wiser, and truer than before. Ethan Turner lost his marriage. He lost the woman he thought would walk beside him for the rest of his life. But in the ashes of that loss, he found something that mattered more. He kept his soul. He kept his dignity. And above all, he kept the respect of his children. And that, gentlemen, is worth more than any lie a person can tell. Ethan's story is not about what he lost. It's about what he refused to surrender: his integrity, his strength, his right to live in truth. And that kind of victory doesn't come from rage or revenge. It comes from facing the truth head on and refusing to let it destroy you. So let me ask you, if you were Ethan, would you have stayed silent or confronted the truth head on? Share your thoughts below. And don't forget to subscribe for more true-to-life stories of betrayal and justice.